sticks. My walking stick won't do that. So something will show up before we're through. Uh, does it work? Okay, if it works. Uh, seriously, I went to get the mic back there and I asked Dan, I said, Dan, is this the mic I get to use? And he says, no, go home. So, enough said. Um, your elders have approved this congregation taking part with Friends Speak. If you remember back last summer, we had Mark Woodward that was here that presented about Let's Start Talking or Friends Speak. And your elders have approved that, and they will be here February the 20th to do training for that. I am real excited about that. And this is an opportunity for us to meet the needs of many in our community that struggle with the verbiage, with their reading skills. And they need this help. And so we also have an opportunity to read with them through the scriptures as we are teaching them there or helping them to read. So come for the training and find out what that's all about and how you can help. And it's a way that they're asking us to do it. So we get to answer their questions on that. So I'm really excited about that. 2 years ago, almost to this very minute, NFL playoffs. Richard Sherman, Seattle Seahawks cornerback, tremendous player, made a fantastic play on Michael Crabtree in the end zone. Broke the pass up, stopped the touchdown, gave Seattle Seahawks the win that put them in the Super Bowl. And if that would have been all that would have happened, nobody would even remember it today. But Richard Sherman is a young, brass athlete, and he got in Michael Crabtree's face, and he jumped up and down, and he yelled, and he screamed, and he had all kinds of profanities and verbiage saying, I'm the greatest that ever was and ever will be, and you will never catch a pass on me, and it went on and on and on. And it just happened that the mics were right there and heard every bit of it. And as soon as the game was over, boy, they stick a mic in his face and interview him. And this young, brash man says, I am the greatest cornerback that has ever played this game. No one will ever do better than me, and no one will ever beat me. And it went on, and it went viral. A word we don't use very much anymore, but on Facebook it went viral. And in the perfect world, you and I know that Peyton Manning would have torn him apart 2 weeks later, but that didn't happen. Since then, it has happened. And he's been beaten. And he's been showed that he is not the greatest of all times. But it's a significant part of our culture today. It's kind of the way we all behave. And if you watch NFL now or NBA, it doesn't matter. Hardly a drive down the field does not have some sort of me statement take place. A guy makes a catch and he gets up and it's first down. Or he makes a sack of the quarterback and he beats his chest or stretches his muscles or tries to look like Superman. Doesn't matter that somebody else opened the hole that this guy ran through. Doesn't matter that somebody else forced that quarterback into him and he got the sack. It's all about me. It's all about what I can do, how I feel. Touchdown dances, or even choreography. That's not the way to say that. Anyway, you know the word. They choreograph. Anyway, give it to me, teacher. They choreograph. Thank you. Thank you, teacher. Okay, they did. Calling attention to themselves and what they're able to do. 2 weeks ago, but even before the game started, first time in NFL history, the officials had to be brought out on the field and put across the 50-yard line to keep the players from getting physical with each other because of all the posturing that takes place. I spend the summer, or at least several weeks, in the mountains, and I see this posturing every day. Nearly every tree I walk by, I can go up there and spend a little time, and I find the hairs from the animals that have rubbed up against it, leaving their scent, so that the other animals know this is my territory. Or they take their claws and they rip down it to demonstrate it. My kids had their dogs at our house over Christmas. It was an interesting concept. You know, you talk about baby-proofing a house. You bring 200-pound pups into the house, and they were really, really good. But the whole night was, or the whole day was spent in posturing as they went around each other, and which one was going to bow down to the other one, and which one was going to roll over on the belly, till neither one of them could even stand up. You know? We see it all the time. I wonder. I know Alvin sees it every time an animal comes to him. Postures to him, even. And we do a lot the same thing. You know, it happens in the scriptures as well. Mark the 10th chapter. James and John come to Jesus. Master, when you come into your kingdom, set me beside your throne on the left. Set my brother beside your throne on the right. I know there's 12 of these disciples of yours, but what are they saying? We're the best. You know, I mean, look at Peter over there. He may have walked on the water a little bit, but he also did a lot of other scrubby things. Give us that honor. Give us that praise. Show us the honor and the praise and the recognition that we need. A societal issue that is out of control. Proverbs 27. Let me just read those two verses. Do not boast about tomorrow, for you do not know what a day may bring. Let someone else praise you and not your own mouth, an outsider and not your own lips. Thomas Version, shut up. You know, if you're good, if you do these things, people notice. You don't have to tell them how good you are. They'll figure it out. As I watch the NFL, I think, how can you get so caught up in the fact that you made a catch and you have to lose control of your body, your emotions over this? You're paid millions of dollars to catch the stupid ball. You caught the stupid ball, so now you're going to tell everybody you saw it? I mean, you caught it? They saw it, right? They know it. So we don't need to tell them. A lot of things happen in the scriptures, though. Mike McLeod, the other evening, read a passage to us from Philippians, the 2nd chapter. And I'd like to reread that and a few other verses to us tonight, because I think it sets the stage for what I want to talk about this evening. By the way, this lesson didn't go the way I intended for it to go. Had it all ready, prepared, started started prepping this week, and all of a sudden it kept growing. And it finally dawned on me that it was like, well, 2 lessons or maybe more. So, you get the introduction tonight, then in a couple weeks you get the conclusion. This is not exactly what I was thinking when I went in, so bear with me. Paul tells the Philippians, therefore, if you have any encouragement from being united with Christ, if any comfort from his love, any common sharing in the Spirit, if any tenderness and compassion, then make my joy complete by being like-minded. Have the same love, being one in spirit, one in mind, doing nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value each of you above the interest of others. In your relationships with one another, have the same mindset as Jesus, who being in the very nature of God did not consider equality with God something to be used to his own advantage. Rather, he made himself nothing by taking the very nature of a servant. Being made in human likeness, being found in the appearance as a man, he humbled himself, becoming obedient to death, even the death on the cross. Therefore God exalted him to the highest place and gave him the name that is above every name, that at the name of Jesus every knee should bow, in heaven and on earth and under the earth, and every tongue shall acknowledge that Jesus Christ is Lord, to the glory of the Father. Look back to one particular line. Do nothing out of selfishness or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourselves. Words of our Master, our teacher. God came to earth, not portraying a king, portraying a servant. These 12 apostles, 3 years with the Master, being with him, seeing what he did, hearing his lessons, following him, and 2 of them still don't understand that they won't be on either side of the kingdom. They haven't learned that lesson. Wow. John, the disciple Jesus loved, I don't believe, maybe I overlooked it, but I don't believe he ever said, I am the disciple that Jesus loved. Always says, the disciple Jesus loved. Never makes reference to the fact it's me he's talking about. Jesus, even that last prayer that he made before he went to heaven, when he talks to his Father, he says, Father, the hour is come, John 17, glorify your Son as your Son has glorified you. Now later on in the chapter he talks about me, I've done what you sent me to do. But even God, physical God here on this earth, didn't make record of that. Luke the 18th chapter. Pharisee stands on the street corner, prays to God. And we all know the story. Stands up there and he looks down at all the other people and he says, Thomas, paraphrase here, he says, I'm better than you. and I'm better than you. Thank goodness I'm not like that sinner over there, that tax collector. I do this. I've done that. Thank God I'm not like them. And then the tax collector gets up and he won't even look up, looks down. Be merciful to me, a sinner. A few years ago, we were doing a sojourn at York College. The weather was bad, lots of storms and tornadoes dipping out of the clouds. President of York College left his desk, drove across campus, and came to some of the places where we had people working just to make sure they knew how unsettled the weather was, that we were in a tornado environment and so forth. About noon, early afternoon. Late that afternoon, the rain is pouring down. You would not be able to see across the street. And here he shows up again with an umbrella and his vehicle to take women that were painting across campus back to their trailers. He got soaked doing it. What an example. That's exactly what I think is being talked about in these scriptures. I'd like to spend a little bit of time this evening in the Old Testament. As I do this, I know we're not bound by the Old Testament. I know we're under a new covenant. Okay? That doesn't mean we can't learn a lesson from these stories. Nehemiah, first couple chapters. Nehemiah, well, first of all, let's realize Nehemiah was a biggie. I mean, he's cupbearer to the king. Now, to us, that just sounds like he's in food services. That's not too big. The thing is, if Harold's the king and this cupbearer is responsible for keeping him alive, he tastes that food because the majority of kings are killed by poison. Yeah. Pretty important then, isn't he, Harold? Yeah. So here's Nehemiah. Some of his countrymen show up from Jerusalem. And he goes to them. And he says, tell me about the remnant. Tell me about those people in Jerusalem. What's taking place there? What's happening? And they give him the lesson. Town is depressed. They're dejected. Community's in shambles. The wall is torn down. Houses are in rubble. The gates to the village are burned. Awful. They're frustrated. And Nehemiah 1:4 says, when I heard these things, I sat down and wept. For some days I mourned and fasted and prayed before the God of heaven. And then I said, now wait a minute. He sat down and wept for days. Then he mourned and fasted and prayed. And then he said a specific prayer to God. He says, God, I'm going to go talk to the king. Prepare the king's heart. Prepare him to listen to what I have to say. And the next day, he goes to see the king. And when he walks in, the king, he doesn't even have to say anything to the king. The king can see it in his face, in his eyes, in his body language. And he says, what's wrong? Well, my people, Jerusalem. The city's been destroyed. It's in rubble. The wall's torn down. The gates are burned. The king says, can I help? I mean, mean, this is the biggie he's got there. This is his cupbearer. He says, I'd sure like to go check on it. I'd like to rebuild it. Well, you'll need some stuff to do that, don't you? And we all know the story. The king sent him on the journey to rebuild it, gave him the money, the equipment, the materials to rebuild it. Wow. But the thing that gets me, when this was bothering him, Nehemiah, he sat down for days and focused on his particular problem. This morning, no, maybe it was in Landon's comments in the bulletin. He talked about quiet time. Talked about thinking about God and what he has in mind. But I think we see a humility here. I think we see a submission spirit or a submissive spirit. Go on real quickly. The very next book, Book of Esther. Now we all know the story. Esther becomes queen. Esther's a Jew. Esther's cousin, Mordecai, is sitting there, and it happens that the king's top guy, Haman, he's another one of these Richard Sherman kind of guys. He's going to posture all the time. Every time he walks out of the head house, he wants people to bow down to him. He wants them to acknowledge him. He wants him to give him praise and honor. And Mordecai won't do it. And every day, Haman gets home, and he's lamenting to his wife. He says, what am I going to do? This guy's going to be the end of me. He's just making me miserable. Being a good wife that she is, she comes up with an idea. She says, well, just get the king to kill him. Yeah. Well, Haman realizes that won't fly, so he comes up with a good plan together. He goes to the king. King, I'm really concerned about some of these people in your charge. I mean, this group of Jews, they don't think like we do. They don't act like we do. They don't worship the gods that we do. And they don't give you the respect that you deserve. He said, I'm a wealthy man. I'll give you all this money. And why don't you just have them exterminated? So they came up with the plan. They put the law into effect. Jews are going to be killed. And if you read the story, it says that Mordecai tore his clothes, put on sackcloth, sat in the ashes, prostrated himself before all the people, threw dust all over himself. Hey, that's a cultural difference, isn't it? Do we act like that? Do we even know what sackcloth and ashes is? Totally different than what we do. I sat in a class one time and I heard him say, oh, that means that you wear like black, when you're going to a funeral. Well, that's not exactly the same thing, people. They tore their clothes. They ripped their clothes because they were so frustrated with the problem that was there. He ripped his clothes. And he put on uncomfortable burlappy things, some say. Others say it was a goat skin, the black goat that was the most uncomfortable and the most itchy. That's why they did it. And then they took ashes from the fires and mixed it in with their skin, in between these garments. They sat down in those ashes. They put them on their head. They took the dust around them and threw it all over their bodies. Doesn't even make sense to us, does it? But what they were saying was, God, we have a problem. And we are forgoing focus on this problem. And we want you to realize that we are focused on this problem. Was it important that they had ashes on their skin and they threw the dust on it? That they didn't eat? That they didn't drink? No. Except that they were focusing on something that was severe adversity to them. Esther sends clothes out to Mordecai. Clean up. Put on these clothes. Don't act like this. Mordecai won't listen. He says, listen, all of our Jewish heritage, all of our Jewish friends are going to be killed, including me and including you. Just because you're the queen doesn't mean you're going to be free from this. You're a Jew also. You're going to be killed. Go talk to the king. Listen, that's not as easy done, she says. If I go to the king and he doesn't stick the scepter out there, my head's gone. He kills me. So for 3 days, Esther says that me and my servants will eat or drink nothing. We will focus only on this with God. And you, Mordecai, and all the Jews do the same thing. And then I will go to God, the king, God the king. And her statement basically is, and if he accepts me and I can talk to him, great. If not, I die. She's saying, all of these other things right now are not important. This is the most important thing, and I'm not going to allow physical things like what I wear, what I eat, what I drink, all the beauty treatments that we do and all these things to get in my way. Focusing only on this problem. Second Samuel. David. We all know the story of David and Bathsheba. Bathsheba's husband is away at war. David has an affair with Bathsheba. Bathsheba becomes pregnant. David sins. He comes up with this plan to get himself out of this problem. So he comes up with this plan and he sends a man to the battle. And he says, send Bathsheba's husband back. I want to know what's going on in the battle. And he's told. And then he sends her husband home. Except he doesn't go home. How can I go home and eat in my house and sleep in my house and be with my wife in my house while my brothers are out fighting? So David's plan is spoiled. He goes back, and David has him killed. Shortly thereafter, Nathan the prophet comes to David and he says, David, you've sinned. He tells him the story. He reminds him what he's done. David, the man after God's own heart, is almost destroyed. He knows he's going to be punished. He knows his punishment will be the death of his son. Nathan leaves. The boy gets sick. For 7 days, David doesn't eat anything. He doesn't drink anything. He's rolling around on the floor. It says he has prostrated himself before God. And he prayed to God for 7 days. as soon as David the king finds out, he goes to his room, he cleans up, he goes and eats. This doesn't seem like proper behavior to his servants. They come to him, David, what's the deal? When your son was sick and dying, you were in all kinds of agony, torment. And as soon as he dies, then you act like nothing's wrong. David says, while he was alive, I did everything in my power to convince God to change his mind. And he didn't. So it's now up to me to change my life into such a way that I can go and be with my son. What I'm talking about this evening is an attitude of submission. I don't think of any of us are as brash as Richard Sherman. And certainly not as brash as that Pharisee that gets up and says, no, I'm better than Job. You know, he's worthless. But at the same time, I don't know that we're as humble and submissive as that tax collector that says, be merciful to me, a sinner. I have read Mark 12 over and over. You know that passage that says, thou shalt love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, all your mind, all your strength. I think that's what it is saying is the same thing that passage in Philippians said. We have the example of a God that came to earth, that submitted himself to God. And that all that heart, soul, mind, and strength is total submission to a God. And if I do that, I'm not going to have problems. Because if I treat Harold better than myself, if I always submit to him, you think Harold and I will have a problem? I don't think so. You think Mike and I'd have a problem? But I think, as humans, that we all fall into this trap. What have I done? I've made this. This is my business. Look what I've done. Look at the house I live in. Excuse me. Look what I've done with my life. Not exactly a submissive thought. And that's what our culture does. And that's what our culture needs to see from us, is a total submissive atmosphere to a God, to a brother, to everyone. And if we have that submissive attitude, like Nehemiah, like Esther, Mordecai, like David, I don't think we have to worry about having this building filled. I think we're talking about when I view you better than myself, when I encourage you, when I point out the good you're doing, don't have to worry about problems. Are we human? Yeah. Me too. I guarantee you, when I think of my God, and the last example that I see of him almost, bending down with a pail of water and washing the disciples' feet. of those things need to be done right here in the pew. You pray to God, God will take care of it. But there's some things that we need to share. And we need to let our shepherds pray for us and encourage us and help us, teach us. But there may also be somebody here that needs to submit to Jesus as well in baptism. Because that's what it is. It's a submission to Him. God, you are God. This is what you want, and this is what you've said I had to do. And I believe you, and I'll trust in you, and I'll live for you, and I'll be buried with you. Submission to God, submission to man, submission that changes our life. If you need to respond in any way,